Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Vish After Dark Q&A, where we're focused on female founders in honor of International Women's Day and Women's History Month. My name is Ash Fortis. I'm the owner of XO Hair Lab Salon and Spa here in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I'm so excited to be joined by Rowena Yeager, who is the owner of Studio Wish Salon and Spa. And today our goal is really just to share with you guys and empower all of our female founders in our industry. We're going to talk a little bit about how we have found some salon success, some of our industry challenges, and some of our top tips so that hopefully you guys can carry this success with you all as you move along into this next year and all the years to follow. So Rowena, can you share a little bit about yourself with us and a little bit about your salon?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for actually having me. I think, the fact that yesterday was National Women's Day or International Women's Day is kind of cool that we're actually doing it today, right after that. So we opened Studio Wish Salon and Spa. Oh, let's see. Originally, it was just a salon, not a spa, 21 years ago. And my daughter and I are actually now running it together, along with an amazing team that we have. And we reopened in a new location in October of this past year and added a spa. So now we have a salon and spa, which is really kind of cool. So my background personally, I started out as an educator, as a stylist and an educator working for a company called Graham Webb, which I'm not sure if you remember or not. It's kind of an older product line. And I actually used to be on their guest artist team and was one of their 40 guest artists that traveled and did education and classes and worked for them for about 6 years and really fell in love with the education side of the industry. And from going into salons and talking to other salon owners and other educators, was really inspired to open my own location and really found it and base it on education, specifically for women, because I think there's a lot of times where we need to empower each other and really hold each other up. And, our industry is made up of a lot of females. And I do find that there's a lot of times that our industry also attracts people that they're very artsy, they're very crafty, but they may have ADHD, or they may have some type of a learning disability that they're dyslexic, or they have some kind of a challenge. And to me, those are the type of people that I hold really close and really dear, because I think they take a little more patience, and they are inspired by somebody that can inspire them by giving them the time and the patience to learn what it is they need to learn, because our element of being able to touch somebody from the inside out and help them feel good is what I thrive on. I want not only my guests, but my employees, when they look in the mirror every day, to see the shine and the glow that I see in them, because a lot of times we don't see it in ourselves. Other people can see it in us, but we can look in the mirror and we might have woken up and had a bad day or a bad dream, or, something that happened later previously in our lifetime that, it haunts us. And I think that those are the kind of things that I don't mind taking that personal time to help somebody through. And so, to me, it's a passion for people and a passion for education that really inspired me to open my business and give back.
That is incredible. I love hearing that. And honestly, I actually am an OG that knows Graham Webb. I've only been in the industry 12 years, I want to say. But prior to that, one of my first jobs, and I think what even introduced myself into hair, was I worked at a salon and supply distributor store. And it was called Blooming Beauty. And so we sold Graham Webb, and I didn't know anything about hair. But we had brands like Graham Webb and Pureology and Alterna and Chi. And I just remember wanting to take all the products home with me and not having a clue what to do with them, but I would research, dive into them. And just like yourself, for me, like I said, been doing hair 12 years. About 9 years ago, I started to get into wanting to be an educator, worked behind a few brands. Kind of like my big break was utilizing social media platforms. The first live broadcasting tool before Zoom or Instagram Live or Facebook Live was a platform called Periscope. And so I utilized Periscope just behind the chair, just kind of put the camera up, and was just really excited to be a part of a community. And I was excited to watch Periscopes myself. But I kind of took it as, I can teach people from behind the chair in my own salon setting and really learn from others, but also be just like an open book, because I love being a student and I love being able to share, just much like yourself, what has empowered me and what I feel is of value for others. So it's great to hear that you have an educator background, because I think much like yourself, that's kind of what led me to wanting to become a salon owner. I got to be one of the co-creators and co-owners of Fulbright Hair Color and Hair Care. Probably, I think that was a journey of like 7 years ago. And being in that type of team atmosphere where you're really like working as a collective, and we had men and women, but our founders with Fulbright also were very passionate about women, and they were recognizing that very few women were actually on the stages, especially in comparison to how many women are in our industry. That for some reason that we're still kind of unraveling, that men seem to be those dominant people that are motivating, inspiring, and having those opportunities to be platform artists and kind of leading that way. So, Alexis Thurston was a big influence on wanting to make sure that at Fulbright as a company, when, they had ownership, that they really made sure that they put females on stage, and also that they were a big part of cultivating the brand and coming up with new ideas and building the education and marketing. So I think that it's wonderful to hear that personal background that you have, and recognizing some of the challenges that hairstylists, especially women hairstylists, face between personal and professional development, and how crucial it is to our success behind the chair. I went on to build my salon. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go right ahead. I will jump in later.
So yeah, I've been a salon owner for 4 years. I opened Exo Care Lab. We're coming into our 5th year 4 years ago, and we are I think a little over 3,000 square foot salon and spa. So salon, definitely I know kind of more like the back of my hand. I've had to definitely learn and humble myself to learn the financial and business side of my business. The spa was definitely a passion project for me. I really enjoyed going into spas myself, even, though I didn't know a lot about aesthetics or massage therapy. I just kind of really enjoyed my experiences on receiving those services. But it's been definitely an enlightening opportunity to be able to learn more about skincare and massage, while also kind of, working in my more comfort realm of hair. So do you have a background? I know you say you have a spa as well, and that's something you kind of just brought in. Can you share with us what motivated, since you have been a salon owner for so long, like what made you make the change into wanting to be part salon and part spa?
Great question. And, I think it really ties into, and there's a lot of things that are going on, especially since the whole C word, which we don't really want to go down that rabbit hole and talk about it.
Sure.
But the reality is that after 2020, there's a lot of people that, took a huge look at who they are from the inside out and started really focusing on self-care. And I think the self-care part of our industry is what really inspired me into the spa part of it, because when you're getting a service where you're kind of laying down on a bed, you're getting a facial, you're getting a massage, it's different than sitting in a chair and having your hair worked on. And I think when you have that one-on-one time, you're in a room, it's a quiet space, you tend to go in your head more. And when you're going in your head more, you're thinking about things. It's trying to navigate the mountains and the clouds of everything that's kind of hitting you. And I think when you can let a lot of that go and just focus on who you are in that moment is important, because as any professional in our industry, I do believe that 80% of what we do is on the inside. 20% really is the cutting, the coloring, the facial techniques, the products, so it's really that tapping into how can we help each other in having more kindness, having more love for each other, really building each other up. And this goes for men and women, because there's a lot of men that struggle with things like that too. And I think in the masculinity of it, a lot of times they feel this need to have to look bigger and stronger and better, and don't focus on things like that. But I have found that there's a lot of men that are so grateful for the opportunity to get a facial, which they've never had before. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have this big business life of running around doing crazy work all day long, and I've never taken the time to really just sit and get a facial and relax, and never realize the medicinal benefits inside that I could be getting from it. So I think that there's a lot of times when we are inspired to do something, we don't realize the benefit that's going to come back. And what really fills the cup of any service provider, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is seeing the smile on somebody's face at the end of a service, seeing the gratitude, feeling the gratitude, and it really kind of fills your cup. So when we give, we receive, and it's a give, win-win versus a give, take, because give, take doesn't work. Give, win-win is always something that I feel is above and beyond what we should be doing. And you have to give without expectation, because I think a lot of times when we, like, for example, you give a gift to somebody, if you have an expectation that you're going to get a thank you card back and you don't get the thank you card back, and then you're upset about it, it's like you totally missed the whole point of the gift of giving. And then on the same token, something that I talk a lot about, I'm also a life coach, and I do a lot of life coaching, and I balance it with doing life and business coach. And it's having that balance of being able to really help someone navigate through what is balance, because we think of balance as being a 50-50. The reality is
Sure.
Everybody's balance is different, and your balance will shift and change. For me right now, my kids are grown. My oldest daughter actually works for me. Both my kids are moved out of the house. My husband are empty nester. My husband and I are empty nesters now, which we love. But my 80% of my time now is at the salon. 20% of my time is at home. It's super comfortable for both of us right now. And when we are together, it's quality time, not quantity of time. And, just making sure that you take care of those around you, and you have to take care of yourself before you take care of those around you. But making sure you take care of those around you is very important.
I absolutely am just falling in love with you. I love everything that you're sharing. Honestly,
Hi,
I'm like,
precious.
oh, we are soul sisters. I love everything you're saying. What's so nice, and to just go back to what you were saying about your spa, and to kind of share a little bit about our spa. That's exactly why I built a spa in my salon. We're a large space. We have a grass wall that kind of divides and adds a little buffer for our spa. Right behind me is my salon and the stations. And what we're in right now is called our processing nook. So in here, you guys can't see it, but I've got like a cabana, and I've got drinks and snacks. And it's kind of where not only when you come for your spa service can you sit and relax, but it's actually a space where our clients, while they're processing, they get to come over, relax, be introduced into the spa. And for the very same reason that you said, Rowena, it's really shifting that energy, not just for clients, but also for our stylists. I think, just like you said, taking care of clients, and what I keep hearing and what I feel in my heart is it's all about the experience and really taking care of them on the inside out. It's also for our team members, right? If you single book or double book, and you're taking all this in, sometimes you just need that little bit of that calm down in between, so that you can stay focused on your professional side of the experience and the skill side that is needed. And also just giving them that like reset. Like at our shampoo bowls, we have a beautiful 8-foot by 11-foot hanging floral. And it's because, it's stressful sometimes at the shampoo bowl. You're like, am I going to get the blonde I want? Are you sure? What's the tone? Like, what's happening? Instead, it was very intentional to think, I want you to disconnect, and I want you to be able to relax and really leave it in our hands, so that this time for you is a reset for you. And just like you said, having that self-care and being able to have a balance of, the hustle and bustle, but then that time where you really can wind down and enjoy and relax. I absolutely love hearing you say so many great things about balance for somebody and the measurement of success for somebody is very individualized. And one of my friend mentors from Passion Square, Nina, she talks about throw balance out the window, the term rhythm, what rhythm are you in? And I can relate to so much of what you said, because as a platform artist and educator, and my journey with Pulp Riot, I was a new mom. I just had my baby. My career took off like the first 6 months of her life. And I spent the first 4 years of her life. If there were 8 days and a 7-day week, that's how it felt. I was always traveling. I wasn't home. We had to make a lot of personal sacrifices for my husband, to be like a very strong partner, being a stay-at-home dad, helping me run my business. I was a suite owner at the time and a booth renter. So building something from the ground up and kind of having that entry level, but turning into a rocket ship, because once the momentum goes, sometimes you're like, oh, it's just going so fast,
Yeah.
And I didn't have any rhythm or any balance. I didn't know the business side of my businesses. I was just, the creative in me and the passion of me was like, I'm going to succeed no matter what it takes. And, since COVID, the C word, it changed a lot. Educators weren't traveling as much. So I'm very grateful I had a home base and I had invested in myself to build my salon and spa. Because prior to COVID, I had stepped away from building myself and my platform and going into other salons to educate. And I really had to focus in on my salon and the systems that I had to create from the ground up. And I had to change, and I had to build a culture in our salon. And I really had to
important.
Put myself at the back, right? And shift into really how I was going to empower those on my team. And then eventually in a different season, and really just understanding like seasons are important, and having the mindset that it's important to dial up your season sometimes. And it's also important to scale them back and to be flexible in that, And so I had to kind of myself really decide, just like you said, right now I've got kids. I've 15-year-old, 8-year-old, and a newborn. And so I don't want to go jet set and lose what I lost with my daughter. I want to plant my feet where I am and get really gritty in my business. And in another couple of years, down the line, I can kind of start speeding back up and then again, start to like refocus on my own personal passions when everything's moving and grooving and allowing me that time. What would you say I'm sorry. You finish.
I was just going to say absolutely, because there's a lot of ways that you can go into helping coach another salon. And I've got 4,500 square feet, and we've got a soundproof wall, which I'm actually sitting behind. I'm actually sitting in my spa right now because it's one of the quietest spaces in our salon. We didn't have anybody having services today, and having this kind of a space, I think, is super important to things like that. And I think it's just really important to pay attention to all the things that you're saying. And I 110,000 times agree with you on the entire thing. So, yeah.
Having your leadership mindset, I mean, there's a reason why you've been in business 21 years, 21?
Well, I've had my salon for 21 years. I've actually been behind the chair and a hairdresser for 36 years. And, what I was saying is about how, like, there's a lot of coaching methods out there and a lot of salons that are looking for coaching. And I believe my thought is, and the way that I approach helping coach someone is, you have to understand where somebody is first, meet them where they're at, and then help them with what their needs are. And I don't think that there's any one coach that fits all. I don't think there's any one coaching system that fits all. And for me, just like you, it's like you want to have your feet in your business like all the time. And there are some salon owners that they don't want to be in their salon all the time. It's like, what is going to work for you and what's going to be best? I love being in my business and I love being around my team. And you brought up culture. And I think that culture is it sounds like such a simple word, but it really is when you think about chemistry and culture, and you think about like what happens with a culture and how it grows. It's important to understand that we are living human beings, and the cells that we are and the energies that we are do blend and connect, and making sure that we have that culture that we're blending and connecting is so important. And helping coach another salon in that same manner is also super important, because if they're trying to mold what their culture is, what does it look like? Listening to your team? Who are they? What are their personal values? And do their personal values fit into your values? And when your values and their values match is how you start developing your values for your business within that culture. And so, I think it's incredibly important to pay attention to those little things. And I think that it's awesome that for you, you've got a husband that's so supportive. My husband as well is super supportive of where I'm at as well in the business. And, helping others and women business owners coming together like you and I are in networking together is really priceless. And, there's a huge piece of value in that. When I got involved with PBA many years ago, back when it was TSA, the Salon Association, which Jill Kohler created, and then it turned into PBA, I actually sat on their advisory council and their board and was with them for 6 years. 3 of those years I sat on the actual board as the salon spa chair. And, networking is so important. And I do think that, especially if we're speaking to new salon owners, find salon owners you connect with, find salon owners that'll help support you in your business and meet you where you're at, because there's nothing more valuable than networking and sharing things like you and I are sharing here. So just wanted to throw that in.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I think the gold nuggets and something I relate to and took me a while to discover, because for me, right, like, and for you, I'm sure, no handbook, no manual. And because of that, and because of your passion and you're talking on a level of humaning and really understanding each individual and like you said, meeting them where they are and understanding their needs. And also, right, the industry is always sharing this advice online, and I can pick it apart, like, that doesn't apply to me. You can only understand and design your business as you can. So my salon compared to your salon, compared to the next salon, there's so many different variables and needs there that, like you said, there are going to be things that are of value that stick and we can learn and bring in from each other. Can you share what your journey was like opening up your salon? Like, what was that process like for you, and how did you implement that owning, like, from scratch? Like, how did that jump happen for you? So for anybody that wants to open up a salon, or anybody that's like, it's day one, oh my God, we're here, how did I get here? Obviously from my perspective and what I can share on my opening, it was like, wow, we just really got to go through it. And like, hindsight is 2020. But yes. You can share with us just like what the journey was like opening your salon and Salon or Spa. Now you've done it again, right? Because you have locations. So there's a lot of things that go into a business plan that obviously once you created one or gone along with that, you have a little bit more insight. And, I bet the second time around was a little bit, hopefully easier for you. I don't have the experience. I've just got my one baby here. Okay, third. So I'm sure by this point you've gathered some things that hopefully made those transitions better than day one, salon one.
Yeah.
So maybe share a little bit of that with us.
Yes, absolutely. 21 years of business ownership can really teach you a lot. And not only teach you a lot about business, but teach you a lot about yourself. And which is another reason that I got involved in doing life coaching, is because we as business owners really need to take the time to look at who are you and what did inspire you to become the owner, the founder, the creator of your business. And for me, initially it was, I loved doing hair. I loved education. And like I said, that was why I originally opened. Did I know a thing about business? Hell no. Was that the smartest way to necessarily run into, let's open a business, Not necessarily. And, we could talk for probably hours on that whole subject. So I'll just give you a few bites of what I feel are important if we're speaking to somebody that's looking to open a business. I think some of the most important things to know when opening a business is just because you're creative and just because you have creative sight isn't going to give you the business aspect of it. When I first opened, my thought process was, I hate numbers. I don't want to have to deal with numbers. I don't want to have to do any of that. So I'm like, hey, husband, you run the number part of everything. I'll run the creative part of everything. How hard can it be? Well, definitely difficult. So fast forward many years ahead, I believe that the key things that you really need to make sure that are important is having a love for numbers and understanding that the numbers actually can be creative. The numbers really tell a story. And now I'm like obsessed with the stories of what numbers tell, paying attention to your KPIs, paying attention to your P&L. I've got an incredible bookkeeper. You know, I do not do my own bookkeeping anymore. My husband fired him. Yep, he's not allowed to do that kind of stuff anymore. He's more of that support piece for me than anything else. I don't want him to have to be responsible for a piece that later on I'm going to say, why didn't you do that? You know, you didn't get that done on time, and or you didn't do this right or that right, because I was expecting him to do things he really didn't know how to do. And my reasoning behind expecting him to know how to do it was because I didn't know how to do it, which isn't fair. And I had to take ownership over the fact that I took a lot of things and put it on someone else, expecting them to know how to do it just because I didn't know how. And so owning that piece and kind of saying, you know what, I'm sorry. It's not your fault. And here I've been blaming you for years for not doing this, not doing that, doing this wrong. So having a good bookkeeper, I think, is highly key. I think the bookkeeper is almost more important than your accountant, because if your numbers are going into your bookkeeping and then your accountant's getting it, your accountant's just reading what your bookkeeper put in. And granted, your accountant can help you when it comes to the whole taxes and paying and like how you can navigate through which way to go when you're trying to do your depreciation. For instance, you know, my bookkeeper sent me an email and said, okay, so what do you want to do with your depreciation for everything that you've just built? Do you want to depreciate it over 1 year time, 3 years time, or do you want to span it out over several years? And I just kind of went, didn't know we could do that. Let's do a phone call so that we can discuss what's the benefit of doing it this versus the benefit of doing it this way. And all of that affects your personal taxes. And I don't think there's, in the beginning for myself, because I can only speak from self, I don't think I had the understanding of how important those little things really can be, which now I run my business based on what my P&L is saying. And it's not necessarily what my P&L is telling me, it's what I tell my P&L. And then what I hear echo back from it based on what I've put into it. And so if I'm putting into my P&L, following my budgets, really looking at benchmarks that I want to make sure that we maintain, and keeping your finger on the pulse of that makes a huge difference. You know, when I first started getting involved in business education and going to different seminars through PBA and serious business and listening to business coaches. I remember Neil Dukoff in a room. I don't even remember which event it was. And he said, how many of you in here hate numbers? And I'm like, oh, he's talking to me. And I like raised my hand, and he just looks at the audience and he goes, get over it. And I just went, oh, okay. And at first I'm like, okay, maybe I should start listening, you know, and fast forward now it's like, oh my gosh, the love that I have for numbers is just as equal to my love of doing a haircut on someone and seeing their smile at the end of the day. I had this beautiful woman that walked in yesterday. And this just happened. She came in, she's never been in my salon. She has not had her hair cut since November of 2009. That's like 14 years ago, right? So she has not had her hair cut. Her hair was like down past her butt. And I didn't know it at first because she actually had a wig on because she hated her hair that much. But she had had a bad haircut in November of 2009, remembers the date of it, how bad the haircut was, and didn't go back into a salon since then. And so she had heard about us, She researched us, she read our reviews, and she decided, I want to come in with Rowena and I want to get my hair cut. Now, she also had regrowth. So I think, you know, helping her navigate through her challenges that she had, and then taking that vision of what she wanted to have happen. We cut her hair off. I talked her into doing color. We ended up staying here an hour after the business closed. And she bought every product that I used on her. She loved her hair when she left. So I know that what I'm doing is from the inside out, but the numbers of what I did for somebody that came in for just a haircut, who left with not only a color in every product that I used on her, now takes home a piece of who we are. So every time she picks up that product, she's going to be like, Rowena did this for me. Oh my gosh, Studio Wish helped me with this color. I feel amazing. And I think we have to make sure that we realize that these pieces aren't separate. They're connected. The numbers are connected to the art. The art and the craft is connected to the client. And the client is just as important as an employee is important, as we are important, as our numbers are important. And so it becomes this circle of balance that in the business, you have to have that balance. But remember, you're part of it. So that's why I wanted to throw in the whole client story with it, because the client's part of our number story, and they have to be. And we can't forget about that, because that customer service piece, which, by the way, we just won our 15th year for Salon Today Top 200 and in customer service. And to me, we couldn't be there if it wasn't for our clients. I mean, we won in customer service. It's our clients who really support who we are, and my team gets it and they love what they do. So, knowing that all of this connects, I think is just hugely important.
Absolutely. And like, when I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, I'm there. Like you, I am not a numbers person. My worst subject in school was math. Like, I
then find
didn't know how to
somebody
earn
that is
myself
good and
money.
they can help you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for me, like when I was in business for myself, I just so naive and just so creative. And so like I'm jumping in and just same in line of what you're saying. And I think we're going to find so many people can relate to that. And I think it's so great because we create this sense of shame, right? I remember being in school, I didn't know how to do a math equation, and you wouldn't find me raising my hand. Maybe I did once, but then I'm like, I still don't understand, right? Like, and I would feel this immense amount of disappointment in myself and shame. And I didn't even want to deal with it. I just kind of wanted to be like, all right, what am I good at? And let me just move into that strength. And I can so relate to you in that aspect. I thought I was prepared. I built my salon business plan. I'd done my level of research on what commission-based salons can profit. But when I Googled it and it said that, commission-based salons can make $1 million, never in my mind did I understand profit and loss. Like, but what's your profit from that, right? So in my first year, we did over $1 million, and that's even unlike most salons. However, our profit was $11,000, and something that you shared that I had to learn.
And then I'm sure you said, where is it?
It lands in your personal, right? Like, so then now you've got your personal taxes that identify with your business taxes. And, the challenges with that were, like you, I outsourced and I hired managers. And so I brought in a financial manager and somebody to kind of be more in that spectrum while I'm in the team building and the interviews and the relationships and the education and working behind the chair. And it really hit me because I'm getting ready to complete my 5-year lease. And I have an accountant. I've always had an accountant. That was something that I did outsource. But like you were saying, I didn't have somebody. Unfortunately, I learned over time that I didn't have somebody that actually really understood. So I couldn't understand because they didn't understand. And I think it was just very overwhelming for the person that I had on my team to understand how color expenses and how to create a formula and how to price yourself correctly instead of just pricing comparably. And the importance of budgets and where your allotments go to know, again, your profits and loss. For me, just like you, I just faced a huge amount of accountability. It was like, I had to, one, make changes in my team because I'm like, if you don't understand it, but that's what I'm paying you for, that's a budget. And that management budget grew and grew, and I was outsourcing. And meanwhile, I wasn't paying myself for my time in management. I was just getting paid for my time behind the chair, which was coming as a loss to myself. And I had to make a hard decision and really say, like, I need to reach out to my other mentors, people like Vish, who really, without Vish, I'm like, I didn't even understand like color expense, nor how could I? Sorry about that. How could I, And so once that started to really come to me, it was like my eyes were open and I couldn't ignore it. And I became more empowered instead of afraid, because my fear was not helping me at all. And I didn't want to be in a loss anymore. And I didn't even want to break even. To me, breaking even is a loss. So I've taken the last year, especially, to change accountant and gain a bigger team so that they can, like you said, go and really understand like what those expenses. They can log into Vish and understand, well, this amount of money was used in color, and this is the amount we're paying out in commissions, and this is how much we're paying to Uncle Sam, and here's your bottom line, so that you really know where you want to pivot. Do you want to grow and expand?
Hmm.
Do you need to step away from behind the chair to grow your team? Do you have to balance both and make those decisions? And I know from day one, nothing went according to plan, you know, between me having a designer that ended up being fraudulent, going double my budget,
Oh,
you know,
geez.
every challenge you could have to
Mhm.
year two being COVID, you know, building up a team that, you know, in a new climate, like you said, we built them up really fast. We poured a lot into education, doing education every Monday, and a huge investment in that. And for me, one of my biggest challenges and obstacles was, you know, right after COVID, I lost half my team. I had a team of like 27, 28, and I lost half of them, and they went into independent, you know, renting. And that for me was like an eye-opening, like, you can be at a point where you give everything and it may not still feel enough, and really trying to hone in on what the most important pieces were. Really has, like you said, just kind of put the grit into it, and just made you realize this requires this type of focus. And if you avoid or outsource, I think, right, a leader can't do everything, but you need to know how to do everything to a degree. You have to know the right questions to ask. You have to be able to hold yourself and others accountable. And you have to be willing to make changes when those things aren't, you know, really working out. You know, you've given it a good old college try, but if it's not really bringing fruition, you're like, all right, we got to move into the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's two things that I think are important in what you're saying. And the first thing is that we should always hang out with people that are smarter than ourselves.
Yes.
And then pass that knowledge down to those that need it, which is exactly what you're doing. And then the other really important, cool thing that I think will be neat for you to kind of recognize is that a lot of times we have fear in front of us and we aren't sure what to do with it. But what fear really stands for is false evidence appearing real. And that false evidence appearing real is what happens here. It's like fear is not something that's tangible unless you've got a tiger or a bear running at you in the woods, which is sometimes what it feels like. Or that elephant that sits on your chest late at night because you just had a walkout. You know, there's all these things that can happen, but what we do with it, which is what you've learned to shift and do with it, is what's important. Is in the awareness of what fear is, you took it and you shifted it and you used the fear as fuel to go to the next level of where you need it to be. And I think that that is the key part of a business owner that has a passion to keep going, is that you have to have the confidence and the courage. And if you don't have the confidence and the courage to go there, then it's time for you to shift and do something else, right? It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means maybe it's not right for you to do. But if it's the right thing for you to do and you need to keep going and you want to keep going and it fuels who you are, then keep going. So I always say, when I have something that comes up in me now that feels like it's a fear, I start analyzing, where's the fear coming from? Why do I fear it? Because usually it's a false belief of something that I'm not good enough, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm shameful, like you said earlier. And when you can take that and you eat it for breakfast and you say, you know what, that's not going to happen. We're going to run after that bear or that lion, and we're not going to let it chase us. And we're going to make a difference by taking a shift in what we need to do differently. And I think businesses that were successful through 2020 into 21 and 22, the reason that they were is because we've realized there's certain things in our businesses that we need to shift. And again, it's not a cookie cutter shift. It's not, okay, what is Ash doing that I need to do exactly like her in order to be successful? It's look at your own P&L, look at your own team, look at your own clients, your own community. What can you do in that moment, in that location, that you can take that fear, make it fuel so that you can put out that good energy to others instead of shutting down. And so I applaud you for finding those ways to shift to make it through some of the toughest times that you probably had in your business. We opened the month after 9/11 when we first opened, and I have no idea what it would have been like to be a business owner prior to 9/11. Now, businesses that are opening now will not know what it's like to have owned a business through what we've survived through and navigated through and successfully conquered through. And so sharing these pieces like what you're sharing, I think are such valuable gem drops that anyone that's watching this should really pay attention to, because we can learn so much from others, so much about what we've been through, and respect the fact that it's okay to be vulnerable. Because I think that that's one of the pieces that women start to feel more shameful, because when we become vulnerable, if somebody steps on that vulnerability, then it hurts. And if it hurts, then we can shut down versus saying, you know what? I'm not going to listen to that. That's not the way that things really are. I'm going to follow through with what I believe is going to give me the strength and the fuel to then continue on. So I applaud you on what you've been through and where you are now, because you're a beautiful person. You've got a beautiful business. I'm sure your family is beautiful. Your team is beautiful, and it's a success because of you.
Thank you. I think we should just take a moment for everyone that's watching to have them tell themselves the same thing, right? Like, what's the saying? Talk to yourself the way that you would talk to somebody you love. And I can just relate with everything you're saying. I think if somebody needs to, outside of this, like dive into somebody, Brene Brown, like you shared vulnerability.
Love her.
Speaks about vulnerability, and you can, right? Like when you're in that leadership mindset, you're soaking all that up. You're inspired by, things that you need to bring in to be a better you. And I agree with what you said. If you need to repivot, dropping your ego and realizing like, nobody can hurt me like I can. I can only feel like a failure if I tell myself a failure. But if I decide to tomorrow change my scenery or change my role, doesn't make you a failure. It's just you're deciding to choose you and to choose joy rather than to do something that you're not really enjoying, but I do believe in having grit. I have a saying, grit over glamour, for me, it's just deciding like glamour comes secondary, the grit is what it takes to be able to get to that side for sure.
Amen.
With you, we talked about teams. What would you say has been really foundational for you to be able to, really build good relationships with your team and employees? What would you say are some of the key factors, or what might they even say was important to them and your guys' relationship between being a leader and being able to have some positive relationships with your employees? Like, what did it take, or even some of the challenges that you faced trying to have those relationships? Because I think a lot of salon owners, that I hear from and what I've faced is sometimes it's not the hair artistry, right? And I do apply like how my experience with my clients are, and I repivot it to my experience with my team, things like you shared earlier, which is really mentoring and being available to your team and being able to guide them and understand them as individuals, and know that one person's goals will not reflect somebody else's. Some person's definition of success will not reflect somebody else's. And even that those goals may change and there are challenges, right? People have lives and they have challenges, and we can't control how others respond to our boundaries or our expectations of them. So it can be a challenge, managing people. And I think sometimes, if I were being honest, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I feel that salon owners face is maybe it's not teaching the skill, but it's the will and keeping your team inspired and trusting you. And just being able to have really, good relationships with your team members?
Yeah, I think that, something that you mentioned, managing people. I believe the person that I heard say this many years ago was Neil Dukoff, is that we manage systems, not people. And when you're managing a system versus managing people, your mind shift changes. And when you have the mindset over, we've written up this procedure for how we answer the phone, how we bring out a guest services, and making sure that we've got systems in place and you're managing that system, then the people will fall into those pieces. So I think that's important to point that out. I think the other pieces are of what we're speaking about here is respect. I do think, and I do see out in the world, in our industry right now, in some instances, disrespect of successful businesses that have gotten to where they are right now. And I think that respect of other businesses is also something that should happen within our own businesses, and respecting each other. So for me, respecting each of my team members as an individual within my team is hugely important. We can't have cookie cutter people. If you have cookie cutter people, it's going to fall apart at some point in time, because that is not balance. Balance is yin yang. You've got to have everything mixed into that. So in that, I need to be able to meet my team members where they're at. So I sit down with each of my team members once a month, and we do our one-on-ones, and we really talk about, where do you want to be? And honestly, the first question that I ask them every time I sit down with them, what is the most important thing that we need to talk about today? And I kind of feel that is important, because you may have an agenda when you sit down to speak with someone, but you don't know what happened in their day this week or this week. And if you don't know what's happened in their own life, and maybe they just need to talk to you about something that happened outside of work, and that's the most important thing that they need from you today, then make sure you've got the time scheduled off to really connect with that person. And there's a lot of times that we used to, years and years ago, we used to schedule one-on-ones for 15 minutes. You're sitting down, you're talking about the numbers, you're talking about where you're headed, what your goals are. And I think it misses the people aspect. The numbers will happen if you take care of the people. So taking care of my team is so important. Making sure that I celebrate them is also very important. Making sure that if I have leaders that are on my team, allowing them the opportunity to step up to a role, and honoring the fact that they want to do more. I do believe that there are times where we can lose employees that really want to have a leadership role, and we miss it and we don't recognize it. So I actually offer up to my team all the time. It's like, if you see something in this business, in your business that you work within, because it's a business within a business, that you can't, and I'm employee based, I'm not meaning that it's rental, I'm meaning that you really do have a business in that 5x5 square, if you're a stylist, that you are doing within a business that you have a responsibility to, and you want to own that responsibility in a different way than just being behind the chair. You see like something social media wise that you want to focus on, or you want to help with event planning, or you want to help with doing inventory, which nobody wants to do that part, by the way. So I fortunately have somebody that does do it for me, and she absolutely loves it. And I'm completely hands off of all of my inventory now. But finding those that really want to step up and do a role. Now, in that, we have to be very careful of not creating a role and then trying to find somebody to put into it. I believe that you should find people of what they want to do and allow them to create the role that they feel they're going to fit best within the team. What's in their wheelhouse? I found out recently that one of my newer hires that graduated and went and got her license about 4 months ago, I think it is now, that she actually has event planning skills. She used to do event planning for the church. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I said, because I'm great at coming up with ideas for events, the executor of it. I'm not good at putting those pieces together. She goes, that's me. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. You sent me somebody that I needed that can actually take care of a piece of something that I'm not the greatest at. So recognize what you're good at, recognize what you need help with, and recognize what you want to give away. And I think that can be super helpful when you're setting up your leadership teams, because we now have a leadership team, and our leadership team goes back to, you can't do cookie cutter, is made up of whatever our Studio Wish leadership team needed to put together to help the business run better. Because I can't manage every single piece of it and manage every single system. I need to have systems that are created, that they've created, that they're willing to manage and take care of, so that we run like a well-oiled machine all the time, so that then we can celebrate.
Absolutely. There is so much gold in what you shared. And again, it all in line with, what we're doing here. I've even learned some, I love what you said about, having once a month individual meetings. And the first thing that you ask is, what is the most important thing we need to discuss? What do you need from me? And leaving it off to them, much like you, collaboration is huge for us. We do have multiple leadership roles. And I love that you say, don't have a role and have somebody fit that. But much like you, social media, hey, you're good at that, let's do that. Hey, inventory, that's something that you're excited about. You want to check the inventory, what products should we phase out? I think, like you said, it's really defining purpose for your team members and making them feel like they have something that they're held accountable to. And I think it goes into not micromanaging, right? Like for us, we have a director of education. While I'm an educator and I have my experience and things that I would do, I've had two directors of education. One of them had moved on. She was in the role for 3 years. Fantastic. And, her husband got orders to Japan. So we moved that role to the next person in line for that. And one change that I made probably like 2 years ago was exactly what you said. I learned to get more hands off, and I had to let their success and wins be theirs. And I had to let their stumbles and things that we had to shift also be theirs, with allowing them to know I'm here to support you. Like, I'm going to go with your idea. I may have reservations about it, but you know what, maybe I'm wrong. And I think whenever you involve your team for collaboration, right? Like any change that we bring in our salon, when we brought in Vish, I went to them first. Hey guys, this is Vish. This is what I want to bring in. This is why I want to bring it in. Obviously, I want you guys to stay loyal to us. I want more money to be put in your pockets. I want us to be able to give you all more things. I don't want you to think of booth renting and independent renting as like the end all be all, and that, oh my God, I'm going to have all of that service dollar money. I want you to understand what I didn't know, and to have all the information you need to make the best decisions for yourself. Because I think our role as leaders is often like a teacher. Sometimes it's a thankless job. And sometimes it's very rewarding. And I think you have to be able to really know yourself, that you're making impacts, and really set aside, like, I want to create value. I want to have value, because otherwise managing yourself can be easier than managing others. And I just think that you brought so many great ideas for salon owners, myself included. There's just so much I'm going to take away from this. And it's all from your experience, right? You've had other people who have motivated and inspired these leadership thoughts for you, and you've been able to see trial and error, what's worked, what's not worked. And I couldn't agree more. You have to make it about people, and you have to understand where they're coming from. And I know some of the challenges will be, some people will fall in and some people will fall out. I think that is a reality. There will be people who are really into what you're doing in your culture, and some people you just kind of have to let nature take its course, and it may not be that role for them, or might not be the atmosphere for them. They may not want to have management, or they may not want to set their goals or be accountable to their goals, but I think being there and just kind of keeping your role is so important, so that, they know that you're there to support them in every opportunity that they could take. I was talking to one of my managers, it's like going to the gym. Some people would just go and they'll sit there, you just go there. You've got everything for you. You've got personal trainers, you've got equipment. You just sit there, yeah, the atmosphere is there, but if you're not putting in any type of action, right, you won't get the result. But then you have other people that go in there and they value, I've got a personal trainer, and, I really like that personal trainer. And a personal trainer's job is not supposed to be to keep with you for years upon years, unless you just love a partner, right? Those are people that probably really enjoy teamwork, but you're there to gain the knowledge to empower you to know how to use the equipment and how to get the best results for yourself. So I absolutely love hearing what you said. I think you shared a lot about relationship with employees. You've even hit on building relationships with community and your customers and how important that is. What do you think, the most important quality of a female leader is? Specifically female, since we are talking about our ladies. Do you have anything in particular that you feel is a quality that a leader should have, even if it's specifically to females or not? Or maybe you have one for each, maybe two good nuggets?
Honestly, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, it's got to be courage. Because if you don't have the courage to do what you do every single day for yourself and for others, then you can start running into a lot of obstacles. You've got to be very conscious of who you are and be very aware of where you've been so that you can make the best decisions in every type of a situation. And if you don't trust and have the courage for yourself, then it's going to be a really difficult road. And again, it goes back to that fear. If you look at fear as fear and kind of go, that's not going to get you where you need to be, because we, as a business owner, I don't care what business you're in, you are going to face fears like that all the time. They are always going to come. If you think your business is perfect and everything's great and I don't have any challenges, someday you're going to wake up and find out there's something that you need to face that's happening. And, just be honest with yourself with it. Trust, honesty, and courage, I think, are the most important things and courage has to come first for any female business owner. And, you were saying earlier about how you went to Vish. My team, and since this is kind of a Vish thing, I think we should bring this up. My team actually, I believe, fell in love with Vish before I did. I actually kind of just showed them a few videos of some other stylists that said that, they were using the system and it managed their formulas, and the fact that they could subtract the waste out of their formula to dial it down to get it so specific that they were like, oh my gosh, when are we getting this in? When can we do the training? And, Jordan came on and helped us do our training. And now my daughter, Milena, she actually manages all of our onboarding. And so every single person we onboard, she goes over Vish with them. She goes over Tippy. She goes over paychecks with them. So she does all of our technical onboarding for all of our employees, and she loves Vish as well as the rest of my team does. I never had to sell my team on Vish. And so there's times where I'll talk to a business owner about Vish and they're like, well, how did you get your team on board? I go, well, let's reverse that. My team got me on board with it because I just showed them a video that I saw at one of our conferences and they were like, okay, we have to get that now. So, I think trust your team, and that reflection of trusting yourself has to be there, because if you don't trust yourself, your team's never going to trust you. If you don't have courage, your team's never going to have courage. It's a mirror, and that mirror of what we reflect is what we're going to get back. It's an echo in that mirror that is so important. So, courage and trust are the most important.
And I have to commend you, because just, when you said the mirror, what came to my thought first, and you're like, I really have to give it to my team. And the thing that came to my mind was, well, but they get that from you, right? Like they say, birds of a feather flock together. So because you have learned to have courage, because you're transparent, because you're honest, because you're having real conversations, it's like you've built a great leadership team. Like people in your salon, something I say to my team all the time are two different things, which is everyone is a leader in here. Leadership and respect are my two foundational parts of our culture. So I can very much relate with you. I think they're super important. I never thought of courage. I guess for me, I think flexible, resilient, grit, but courage, yes, like absolutely so foundational is to have courage. And, when I'm thinking of other salon owners listening to this, and there are going to be salon owners who are challenged by their team. And they're going to have to really, like you said earlier, take it in and like realize it starts and ends with you. I saw Gianna Bianca was putting out some content where it's like, oh, do you have a toxic salon? And it's like, whose fault is it? It's the salon owners, right? And you think about that. And sometimes
the head down.
Like, oh God, like, are you sure? It's not toxic people? And she went on further with it, right? And she's like, well, if you have toxic people, they shouldn't work for you. And, I'm one of those people, I give and I give and I go. And I don't quit on people very easily by any means. I very much human, and I have a
good first.
large amount of empathy, right?
Yeah.
But I don't get taken advantage of. And I think that I'm very authentic. So I'm very honest boss. I'm very kind, always respectful. I've never had to yell at an employee. I've never had to diminish who I am. When I went through the challenge of losing half of my team, it wasn't presented to me in the best way, right? I found out about it in a very not great way. But what I did do is I took time, and I took probably a week and a half, and I went to every person on my team and said, I heard a rumor that I'm going to be having a walkout. And I just wanted to ask, are you a part of that? And if so, is there anything I could have done differently or better? And I had some great conversations, and I learned a lot, and, I made that next transition, but I was proud of what I did and how I handled it.
Good
and
for
I
you.
allowed for my grief and my anger and my frustration, and allowing myself to kind of be broken and rebuilt, so to say, and in a stronger sense, for sure. But I think, like, as owners, we have to really understand that everything that happens in our businesses or behind the chair as employees or salon owners, really, it does reflect a mirror from where we are and who we are. So I just absolutely love what you're sharing. I feel like this podcast and this Zoom, whatever you want to call it, this connection, this webinar is going to be so beneficial as just something to I think, excite salon owners and people who just want to keep elevating themselves or keep strengthening themselves, their systems, their team. How did you cultivate all of this? How did you come up with, like, becoming a life coach, and where did this, like, kind of begin for you? Like, what was the changing moment where you just, like, what, like, was this always there? Have you always just been this person and it was there, or was there something that happened? Or was there, like, a podcast or a season? Like, could you tell me if there's anything? Like, for me, mine was kind of like my walkout. I was kind of like, whoa, like, earth shattered. Like, I was shocked, and I'm wondering, because for me, that changed a lot of my mindset. Obviously, owning a salon, I knew I needed to really absorb as much as I could. So I read books and I read podcasts and I reached out into my community. But I think my second notion of really scaling it up was after I experienced, that loss. I just really had to make sure that my mindset was really good if I was going to continue. So how did you cultivate this for you and in your businesses?
Well, for me, I believe that, like you said, it takes something like shocking and broken to help you rebuild. And sometimes that broken and rebuild isn't necessarily a business. It can be you as a person. What happened in my life was I actually, and I'll give you the short version of it, but I lost my brother, my oldest brother, and it was very sudden. He died in a plane crash, and he was a pilot, and he was also somebody that liked to jump out of planes, and he would teach people how to tandem jump out of planes so that they could do it at resorts for vacationers. And he lived in Panama. He went up in an ultralight because he'd jump out he told me at Thanksgiving that year, because this happened the week after Thanksgiving, that he would jump anything because he had jumped out of a helicopter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Monty, why are you jumping out of a helicopter? He goes, hey, if it flies, I'll jump it. And I'm like, all right. So when I think about courage, I think about my brother. And my brother had courage to do things that many of us would never do. My older sister always called him our brother of 9 lives, because he had so many opportunities that he could have passed away and he didn't. And this particular time, he went up in a plane and it crashed, and it was actually his 3rd plane crash, believe it or not. And this one unfortunately took him. I was in denial that he had passed away for a very long time. I actually learned how to hack into Gmails pretty easily. So be careful what you use as your your questions, for your getting back into it. Because if you have a relative that knows what street you grew up on, what your dog was when you were younger, what your mother's maiden name was, it can be pretty easy to get somebody's password.
Sure.
So I learned a lot from that piece, but so I realized that one of the things that I did was I judged my brother a lot on his choices that he made, because he did so many crazy things. I'm like, you really are a nut, right? And when we lost him, and I realized how much of my life could have been different had I looked at my brother differently. At the time, I didn't know this, but I became very angry, upset, and hurt inside. And what happened to me is I really shut down, dove into a bottle, started doing things that I probably should have never done. And I had a lot of people around me that fortunately loved me and supported me. But I think I mentally, and I don't think I did, I really did, I mentally and physically checked out of my business. And when that happened, it was difficult. And that piece led me to, what am I going to do next? Once I finally got to the point where I could move in a different direction. I don't want to say move on, because that's not what happens when you lose someone. You just find a different way to look at it in your life. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be where I am today. I would not be a life coach had my brother not passed away. And I got involved with a beautiful woman. Her name is Alejandra Crisafulli and Bonnie Bonadeo, who were doing a presentation class of how to present from stage in an authentic manner. And they had a company that was called Naked Audience Productions. And I went to take their course. And what happened during that time when I took that course was I realized, and I didn't know this signing up for it, that in those 3 days, they literally break you down, that when you're speaking from stage, you're speaking about who you are from an authentic place. It makes you a better presenter, because people will see that your authenticity of who you are as a person then translates into whatever it is that you are teaching, whether it be a school teacher, whether it be a motivational speaker, or you're speaking about numbers, or wherever direction that it is, you're more authentic if you can speak about who you are from the inside. I didn't realize at the time that I didn't identify with who I really was on the outside, because in my mind, I could stand on a stage and pretend to be anybody I wanted to be when I would get up and present and teach and do education when I was with Graham Webb. So that being said, I was doing that in my personal life too, and in my business life, and didn't realize it until I went through life coaching with Alejandra, because at that 3-day, at the end of the 3-day, she sat down with you and she's like, okay, so what do you want to do with everything that you've learned? And I'm like, I've realized that I need you more than just this 3 days. And I don't know what it means, but I think that I've got a lot of shit in my life that I've not dealt with, that's come up this weekend, that I need to figure out what to do with it. So I went through life coaching course with her. And in that process, I realized I may not be the only person that's broken, that may need to have some awarenesses so that they can possibly shift. And I wanted to take that and then share it with others. And that was in, I believe, 2013. And so when I went through that whole process and gained those qualities, then I realized, oh my gosh, I've checked out of my business. I need to mentally check back into my business and pay attention to my business again. So then I went for business coaching, and I went through Inspiring Champions with Lauren Gartland's program, and went through that whole gambit of different classes and education and coaching that they did. And then I gained this amazing knowledge around business and business coaching. And so I took the two and I married them together with life coaching and business coaching, and realized that there's probably a lot of business owners out there that have challenges that they don't realize how much their personal life is affecting their business life. And when we have great relationships, our great relationships start with our relationship with self. My relationship with myself was what was broken. That hurts to even say it today. And if your relationship with yourself is broken because that voice in your head is constantly telling you you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not successful, then you're always going to be stuck and have this wall. And making sure that you really start looking at, like, going through a pathway of figuring out what is it that you need to pay attention to. It's not an easy fix. It's not an overnight fix. It's not a one conversation fix. It's a highway of creating a roadmap of what were you, where are you now, and where are you going? But you have to look at, what are your behaviors? What are your values? So now if something happens in my life and I feel the energy of something not right, first thing I do is I go and I look at my list of values. And a lot of times I just do this mentally. Sometimes I'll literally pull out my values and look at them and say, what's off? And when you find a value that's off in your life, then you have something to work on. But if you don't take the opportunity to look at what is off, you're not going to figure out how to get it back on. And you can't run through your business or run through your life with blinders on, because you're not going to be out of it. You're going to feel like a hamster in a ball, or you're going to feel like you're on a roller coaster that just won't stop. Or I used to equate it to a merry-go-round. And I used to ask Alejandra, I'm like, how do I get off of this merry-go-round? I'm like, I don't understand how I can't get off of this and move on with my life. And she goes, it's just a decision and a choice. And I'm like, boy, you make it sound so easy. And she goes, it's a decision and a choice. And I didn't get it. Now I get it. And even though I can look at it now and say, okay, my gosh, I can get it, and I can cycle through things quicker now, it didn't, like I said, it didn't happen overnight, and it doesn't for a lot of people. And so I have a great deal of compassion for somebody that may be hurting on the inside and faking it on the outside constantly. And it's not a good place to be. So it's like, how do you navigate through that so that you can be the human for yourself and for others, and have that good relationship with yourself, that you can look in the mirror and say, oh my gosh, I love Rowena. I love who she is. I love her relationships. And if you can't say that about yourself and say it out loud and say it publicly and say it to yourself in a mirror, then it's a stuck feeling. And it's okay to be there, but it's not okay to stay there. So if you know that you're there and you need out, reach out for help. There's coaches everywhere. Almost every business coach has some aspect of the personal side of it as well, because we recognize the fact that we're a human being running a business, and humans and beings are two different things. So our human side is the flesh, is the mind, is the body. The being part is that place of nothing matters in the past, nothing matters in the future, only matters what is now. And the being doesn't live in the past. The being doesn't live in the future. The being lives right now. And we get that confused with the voice in our head as being the being. The voice in our head is the human. And we need to tell it to either shut up or to keep moving forward if it's telling you something good. But you need to recognize when it's the difference. It's like the good little devil on one side and the bad little angel on the other side. And notice I switched those. So it's like, that's yin yang. If you don't know what it feels like to have pain, you'll never know what it feels like to have pleasure. And if you don't know what it feels like to live in hate, you won't understand what it feels like to live in love and happiness and sadness. And I could go on and on with that. So it's really that understanding of what is the most important piece.
And I think, like you said, when I hear you say decision and choice, those are actions, right? Like, and I think some of us get stuck in the, like you said, in the mindset and the mental war, and a lot of things that I see with people I mentor that are struggling. It's the choice. It's your decision. It's your choice, and those are actions. It's the action to decide. It's the action to choose. But those inevitably are in your hands, right? It's like a mountain. You can either like go up and I'm not there, and you go back, or some people just, they're able to see a challenge or recognize something that needs to change.
And it can be easy
over it. Yeah.
And it can be easy to blame someone else for that. Yeah. And there's so many times that when I look back and it's like, oh my gosh, I blamed my husband for things that didn't get done in my business right. Whose fault really was it? Fine. I put him in charge. So, if you're blaming an employee for something they didn't get right or didn't do right, who taught it to them? You probably did. Who hired them? You did. So it's like you have to look at where the root of things are instead of going through a life of blame. That's not easy for a lot of people. And it can sometimes really bite you.
Right? It's not constructive to blame them, and sometimes not constructive, so to say, to blame yourself, but to switch the mindset into recognizing like, this is something I'm struggling with. This is a personal challenge. Like for me, organization. I've got to time manage and get strong with organization so that my systems,
well, I'm with you on that one.
Who are like, right? It's because for me, it's like you've already got such a laundry list of things to do. And so time management, organization are so important. But as a salon owner or anybody in life, just life, humaning, right? You've got, oh, here's 5 more things. So now your list is distracting. And if you're in so many places and you have your hands in all the pots, you can't always stay as focused as you need to. So like you said, really recognizing your value and what your value is and staying on track with, this is what I need to do and this is what I know. And these are the action plans I'm making to achieve them. I mean, it sounds like your brother and losing your brother was definitely a very impactful situation for you personally. And inevitably, a lot of what I'm hearing, and I think really rings true, is that what impacted you personally obviously had a large impact for you professionally, and that they really go so closely tied together, because you as a leader, you're a human. And much like your team, we're just as human as they are. How would you say you're at this point, right? Because we talked about balance earlier. At this point, because I'm sure you've learned in your balance to the beginning of your career and being a leader to now is different. How would you say your current healthy, like what's some healthy ways that you've been able to balance being a leader in today, in the present?
I think one of the healthiest things is owning what my piece of the business is and allowing my team to own their piece of what the business is. Because at the end of the day, we are running a business. It's not just a salon. It's not just a spa. It is a business, and really recognizing who's patronizing this business. And it's very humbling to come to the point of realizing how important some of these pieces are and keeping yourself on that same level. It's easy to get your head up in the clouds, especially when it's, oh my gosh, we've got the top 200 for the 15th time. But the reality is that happened because of a lot of hard work. It doesn't just happen because, we fill out some papers and, we answer some essay questions. There's got to be some substance behind it. You don't just get awards like that because you filled out some papers and you filled them out right. It's important to recognize that it's not just one person. It takes a team. It takes a village, and be part of your community. I think social media has really made that evident, and how important it is being part of a community.
Absolutely. All right. So one of my last few questions for you, obviously I'm a new mom. I just had my 3rd child, and
congratulations.
We're small owners. Thank you. We're small business owners, and being that we're talking about women and it's, a woman dominated industry, maternity leave is something that a lot of us think about or we're faced with. Is there anything you all are able to do as a salon or, salon and spa that are able to help women who are going on maternity leave that you could share with us?
I think everybody's maternity leave is going to be different. And I think, again, you have to meet the individual where they're at. And I do the same thing with their schedules. It's like, what's your dream schedule? What's going to fit into your life? And you're going to have employees that, they live at home. They don't have children, they're pretty much like, you tell me what you want my schedule to be. But then you're going to have employees like you that have 3 children, or they might be a single mom and they might have to, get a kid on the bus in the morning. Oh, the business opens at 9. My kid gets on the bus at 9. I can't be there till 9:30. So what are you going to say? Okay, I can't hire you. I mean, it's, paying attention to those little things, I think, is really super important. I totally just lost the train of thought of what your question was.
So basically, as small businesses, right, we're not like corporate business structures. So
Uh-huh.
for me, for my maternity leave as a salon owner, I had to kind of kick up because we don't offer maternity leave pay. I had to
Maternity
kick
leave.
up
Oh,
my
gotcha. Okay.
work.
You got me
Yep, I
back
had to
then.
kick up my
Okay.
work schedule and kind of set that money aside to kind of be
Yes.
able to take an
Yes.
extended, 6 weeks off. And I know it's
Exactly.
hard. We all want to be able to, as salon owners, like offer benefits, right? Like, and our benefit packages could be retail incentives, larger
Hmm.
commission scales,
Yep.
education rewards, and paid time off. So
Hmm.
one of the things that, I know a lot of women struggle with is time off, and how they can either
Yes.
budget for that or, as
Yes.
salons, maybe just our ability to share with one another,
Hmm.
I'm sure we'd all love to, right? We'd all love to be able to
Yes.
provide time off for our new moms. So, I was just curious if there was anything, because obviously for me, I'd love to get to a point where in the future, if I could offer something like that for our team members, it would have been a great help because, I think for my team, I have to remind them like my pay is what I earn behind the chair. I don't draw from the business. So I do relate to how you guys are. I've before owning the salon had to make a lot of sacrifices, and if I wasn't behind the chair, I didn't, wasn't able to make an income. With
Right.
my daughter, I had a 2-week maternity leave, and that was because we were poor, and I had to get
Yep.
back behind the chair. It wasn't because I
Hmm.
wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess for me, and it's just so insightful. If there's anything that anyone's doing that has been a great formula for their salon, and that they've been able to do something of that nature, because our businesses are small, owned businesses, and we pay so much in taxes and overhead and things like that. So
Right.
yeah, I was just curious if you guys are able to provide any type of maternity benefits.
Yes. So one of the things that we do is obviously we allow them to take the time off that they need to take. And, if they have a vacation time, putting their vacation time towards that time off. And, I've had employees that want to do six weeks off. I've had employees that want to do 12 weeks off. And if that's what fits into their lifestyle and it works for them, then great. So what I do is one of the things I do is I continue to pay their insurance if they're on our insurance through that time. The other piece that I've recently added, because I have some new moms in the business that actually were on our insurance, is we actually pick up the kids now. So if you have children that are on that you would like to add to the insurance, we do that. And we pay 50% of all of our employees' insurance. We do a week paid vacation after a certain length of time and 2 weeks paid vacation after a certain length of time. And so I think, allowing them to do what fits into their lifestyle is hugely important. I do think coaching them and helping them realize that everything that we do in that time, although it's important for us to spend time at home, is also, there's always going to be a sacrifice on the other side. And you have to realize the reality behind what you're doing. So I do explain that as well, is the longer that you're out from behind the chair, a client tends to come every 5 or 6 weeks. If you are doing more than 5 or 6 weeks, that's 2 times that they're either going to go to someone else in the business or they're going to go to somewhere else. And so we do try to keep those clients into the salon, obviously, which we do. But there are times where when that stylist comes back, if they've been off for a longer period of time, then they may have a feeling of like they're starting over again. And so I believe the coaching piece of, yes, it's okay. You did what you needed to do. It's important that you spend time with your kids. So now, yes, we are going to start over, but it's okay. So how do we help them get back into that mindset of not punishing and shaming themselves, especially women, for taking the opportunity to stay home and take care of your kids, or deciding to come back for only 3 days versus 5 days? It's okay. So I think, helping them know that it's not a shameful thing and you're not going to go, well, that's what happened and now you have to deal with it. It's like, no, it's okay. And we want them to be able to spend time at home and time with the kids and time with their husband, because they have an adjustment that they're going to go through when you come back from a maternity leave. So I think not only while they're on maternity leave, but knowing that when they come back, there's possibly going to be some challenges that mentally and emotionally and personally and relationship wise that they're going to have to navigate through, and letting them know that you're not less than because now your numbers are lower. You may have a top stylist that decides to go out, have a child, and then come back part-time, and they're used to feeling like top dog. How are you going to help coach them through that? You're where you need to be. Enjoy the moment where you're at and appreciate the fact that now your family's grown, and that's a good thing. So, and they may take on a different role in your business. And if they want to take on a different role in your business and possibly do more management versus doing behind the chair, or possibly be in the spa more than being behind a chair, there's all kinds of things that can come up. But being present and meeting people where they're at, I think, is the most important. We got to meet them where they're at.
Absolutely. I agree. Could not agree more. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's super insightful. And again, just being a mom and, what we do here, same thing. I think being flexible and really making sure that they're happy outside of your business, just make sure, that helps to ensure that they're going to be happy inside of your business. There has been so many great tips for women, I feel, in this discussion. Have we left any tips out before we close out that you want to share? Anything that's left remaining as a golden nugget that you want to share? Now is the opportunity.
I think the most important thing that I would share at this point is make sure you take time to celebrate you and celebrate your successes, because the success is not the financial piece. The success is how you feel inside, and don't miss the point of enjoying where you're at every single point in that journey, even when it's something that's hard. There's gems in that. There's nuggets that are like raw in those moments that we can appreciate later if we realize that those things, even when they're hard, that they can be soft. It goes back to that yin yang and that balance. So celebrate you and just enjoy where you're at every single moment.
I absolutely love you so much. And I honestly, I think that's such a great way to leave off. And it's so funny because it's actually, I had a client come in and she, I'm back from maternity leave. So she's seeing another stylist of ours. And when I looked at her and I hugged her, I was like, hey, how are you? Happy to see her. And I could see in her eyes that there was something going on. I'm like, hey, you doing okay? And, she just was honest. It was like, no. And so I pulled her into the spa away from everyone. And I was like, hey, she'll be with you in a second. And just having a heart to heart and just started crying. Like I could cry right now. I'm like, put it in, the impact of me, put it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not in a good season. I'm stressed. I'm depressed. Some things are getting to me. And I know she's perfectionist. I know she's really hard on herself. And, just being there and listening. And my advice to her was like, you're so hard on yourself. And the first thing we said earlier was like, you have to talk to yourself the same way you talk to somebody you love, because I know you wouldn't be saying this to them like you are you. And, we all are able to really be heightened off of negative experiences, and really we feel them and they stick to us. We get so sticky to them, but we don't do that in celebrating ourselves. And that was something I had to really deeply recognize. Here I was, successful hairstylist, successful with the hair color company I grew, successful being on stage, successful being a salon owner, successful authoring a hair book. But I also had a lot of missteps and failures and things that were really painful, like you were sharing in those experiences. And I remember a big part of growth for me was I wanted to hide from them. I wanted to almost take it out of the book, right? If I was thinking of writing it all down in a book, I wanted to forget the people that hurt me. I wanted to almost erase everything that had happened. And it took me a second to realize, well, then you're erasing the good. And there was a lot of good. And I think it's like grief and loss, right? Like when we lose somebody close to us, I have as well. You don't want to focus on their death. You don't want to just have that be what's the centerpiece of that. So you really have to dig into having a place for the grief, having a place for all those human emotions, but also realizing all of the good that came with it. And I think that it's just really true to what you were just saying is, there was a lot of times where I didn't have people celebrating me, and I didn't know how to celebrate myself. And I didn't know how to validate myself. I didn't know how to trust myself. And as I started to grow in those areas, I not only make sure that my team celebrates each other and, really remembers comparison is the thief of joy, and you will rob yourself and others, because they deserve to be celebrated. Hard work deserves to be celebrated.
Yes.
And you know, I remember what it was like not having people celebrate. And then when you start having win on win on win and it's surface level, right? Nobody knew everything it took to have those wins. And you're sitting there and you're like, people really hate to clap for people that continue to win, you know? And it made you feel like you needed to shrink. Or for me, I felt like I needed to shrink. I need to shrink. I need to shrink. And it was kind of me playing a little too humble. I didn't know how to really invoke, I'm the leader and I am humble as pie. And, you know, but at the same time, I do deserve to really sit in the fact that I have had great success and that no success comes overnight and no success comes without failures, if you will. And I just think that, like you said, you have to just sit and soak in that moment and really just appreciate all the good and all of the bad that led you to where you are. And to just remember that everything is temporary. So, you know, if you're in a rut, you know, I'm sure, you know, when you address it and you get over it, you're going to get to that better and greater side. And it tastes a little bit better when you get there, right? You put in that work and you're like, oh, this is so much sweeter.
Yes.
Well, I have enjoyed our time together so much. I have learned a lot. You have an amazing, amazing ability to lead your team members and be an inspiration for not only myself, but anyone that's going to be watching this. Just to remind everyone, this is going to be available with Vish. Every month, Vish is going to be doing these webinars, which are, you know, here to empower us, because I definitely feel empowered every time I come on to one of these webinars, but they are great resources to share amongst each other, especially for, you know, any female that's watching this. Tag one of your friends to the video, share it with them, let them, you know, be a part of your journey with you. And we have support groups within Vish, so other salon owners can really connect there through Vish, through every platform that we have. You can really access the tools that you need and be able to adapt into some of these mindsets that obviously have given Rowena some great success. I have had some great success. I want to continue to, you know, be kind of in Rowena's footsteps. I feel like I'm right behind her. So I hope that in 21 years and 30 years and on, that I'll be able to continue to have the same mindset that Rowena has, and that we all can. I think we can all learn from these things that I think have a lot more in common than we realize. And I think it's just breathing in fresh air, just knowing like, okay, like we're speaking the same language. It's not a foreign language. And if you're just kind of stepping into this journey, just keep a student mindset, you know, just always be a student and always be willing to learn and be flexible. And I think we'll all end up exactly where we're meant to be. So I just want to thank you so much, Rowena, for being with us, and a huge thank you to Vish for facilitating this for us.
Thank you, Ash, and thank you to Vish as well. And, you know, let's keep in touch, because I think, you know, we're always brought together for a reason. And, you know, just like you took the opportunity to listen to your client that came in, we touch more hearts than hair, and with each other, that's what we've learned to do. And we need to continue to do it with each other as well. So thank you so much. Absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm very humbled by the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rowena. And you guys can catch us at Vish Salons on Facebook. We also have our YouTube, where you will have this uploaded so you guys can watch it once, twice, however many times you'd like to. You guys have a great evening, and we will catch you in next month's webinar.
All right.